What's up everyone, Darryl here. First of all, can you believe it? We only have less than 30 days before 2020 is over, which means I can start using 2021 in my video titles. But in all seriousness, we have really gone through a lot this year. Through this entire year, it was kind of like a roller coaster ride, and it really showed how much endurance we have when it comes to holding stocks. Not to panic sell and not to time the market. Because everything the experts say would happen,
rarely ever happens.
It was found that last year, throwing random darts to a random board of index funds actually made better returns than hedge fund managers. And if you want to step things up notch, a bunch of blindfolded monkeys actually outperformed the market index by 1.7% since 1964. So I think it's safe to say that you can ignore these stock market experts in their prediction, except for me. Smash like. Because at least I'm honest and self-aware that I can't consistently beat the market throughout the long run. And if you can't beat them, join them. Anyway, with the blindfolded monkeys aside, I'll cover that later because that's probably the whole reason why you're watching this video. But let's take a moment to talk about what I think is going to happen to the stock market in 2021. I'll share with you where exactly am I investing my money into, and then I'll give you some reasons for and against the stock market having a good year in 2021.
But before I start this video, like this video for the YouTube algorithm, and just to make an offer for you guys, if I get 1,000 likes for this video, I'm going to shave my head bald because that saves me a lot of money and also it's entertainment for you guys.
And with that said, let's get to the video. So first of all, anything we've learned so far from 2020 is just a test of how much you make decisions based on your emotions. In other words, it's an ultimate test of your endurance. When you see shutdowns of businesses everywhere for an illness we don't know much about, while the stock market dips about 5 to 10% day after day, it takes a lot of mental fortitude to tell yourself, I'm not going to sell, and if I have any more money left over, I'm actually going to continue buying more shares during this drop. Now, even though I didn't sell anything, in October this year, I kinda almost made the foolish decision. Yeah, I know, I also can't resist the temptation of greed sometimes, but somehow I managed to fight it and I did not make that ridiculous play. When Aurora Cannabis went up by 7 points on the day of election, I got carried away thinking that cannabis is going to shoot up from then on. But in hindsight, what my most logical move would have been was to save money last December when the news of the virus started circulating, instead of spending them on more and more business ventures. Anyway, we can't alter the past, so let's just wire our brains towards making better choices in the future. Back to investing. My largest positions now are still in cannabis stock and also Chinese electric car companies and tech companies. And some really stable stocks that bring about good amounts of dividends for me in the long run. Yeah, I know you might say, Darryl, your portfolio is way too much on the risky side. Well, risk equals reward if you haven't already known. I do a lot of research and background checks on the companies that I invest in, and I don't just ask monkeys to choose them for me, but that might be a better choice, maybe. I also balance out my portfolio by investing in less risky stuff such as ETFs, indexes, and S&P 500, which is one of the indexes which I strongly believe that if you are new to the US stock market, you should make this one of your first investments. Sure, recently we've seen some dips and some all-time highs, but throughout all of that, I just kept buying. I allocate a percentage of my income to high-growth stocks, regardless of where it is trading at. And long term, I've taken the approach that whatever happens day to day will not be any difference 20 years from now. As far where I think the stock market is going from 2021, I have slightly different opinions on things. Let's go on some of the reasons why the stock market might continue to climb higher, and then I'll give you some of the contradicting arguments as to why the stock market could continue to drop to the shithole. Which is what leads me to ask if you want to hear the good news first or the bad news first. So I think it's better to get the bad news out of the way so we can leave the good news at the end, to have a good positive end. Though I want to make it clear, a lot of speculations could change week to week depending on what actions take place, if there's another huge bailout, or if there's any changes made to the policies by the United States President. And more often than not, what we think is going to happen doesn't actually happen. Because once we know about something, we have the power to act in ways to change it. It's as if I told you, you are about to walk outside and get kidnapped by monkeys. So you choose not to go outside, and because of that, you don't get kidnapped by monkeys. Well, the same thing applies to the market. So as of now, here are some of the issues we are going to be presented with for 2021. One is going to be the unemployment rate. There are currently 11 million people being unemployed, and that's a number which has been steadily decreasing since April, but still 7% of the entire population is still a lot of people, and that's only what's being reported. It's speculated. And once the US economy begins to reopen, there's not going to be enough consumer demand to justify these companies holding on to everybody. A lot of these companies have to reduce their overhead just to maintain profits, therefore unemployment. In fact, it's even reported that 4 million jobs have been vanished eternally based on how many people are shifting to remote work. So as unemployment remains high, that in turn is bad for the economy. Number 2, we also have more possibilities for further shutdowns. If this happens, it's uncertain how this is actually going to impact the job markets or if further layoffs are going to occur. Quite a significant portion of the overall unemployment rate is from these small businesses. But on the bright side, a lockdown might actually help reduce overall cases. But in the short term, it's going to be a rough time for all small businesses in Malaysia and in the US. Because of that, I have a feeling that the stock market would react to this in the same way they did earlier this year, and that would be by some very messed up stock drops that would cause a lot of people to panic sell. The 3, we heard this time and time again, the stock market is not the economy. And every day, it seems to be more and more disconnected from reality. You would think that with this pandemic going on, stock markets would not be surpassing all-time stock market record highs. You would also think that announcing a stock split wouldn't cause the stock to rise 20% overnight. You would think that there would be a shred of logic when pricing the markets, but no. More often than not, the stock market is illogical and it doesn't really care about fundamentals, it doesn't care what you think the stock market should be trading at, it just does whatever it wants. That worries a lot of people who think that one day all this optimism is going to wear off and suddenly the stocks won't seem so good anymore when they are brought down to reality. And 4th, there's also a concern that people aren't going to spend as much money as they were before, and that would lower corporate profits. Now obviously that depends on the company because some online businesses are going to be doing exceedingly well, but if we are just going to be referring to the overall market, less spending equals less growth. And on top of that, there's really not a lot of room to lower interest rates below where they currently are either. So the only way to get people to spend more money is either to get jobs back or offer a bigger stimulus package. And if more stimulus package doesn't come, it could take us a while to dig ourselves out of this mess. And of course, before you guys come in and say,
Oh, what about the inflation you say? Darryl, what about the inflation?
I would tend to agree that, but oftentimes, inflation actually can be good for the stock market, because that will actually help prices go up. Not to mention, inflation actually pushes people to spend more money, which will only happen if people get their jobs back or be offered more stimulus package, which we'll just leave that out for now. But don't worry, we don't have to constantly keep our perspectives on the downside, but since we got all the bad news out of the way, let's turn around and go on the good news. Firstly, we have some substantial news that the vaccine is coming out very, very soon, if everything goes as planned. It doesn't matter if it's Pfizer or Sinovac, it doesn't really matter which company the vaccine is from, as long as there's a vaccine for people to keep their peace of mind. So with that said, you can most definitely start to see people starting to spend money again as usual, travel, start new businesses, somehow returning the perception of the economy back to normal, or even to an optimistic standpoint. Second, I'd like to point out that if the economy gets too bad, the worst possible case is for the Federal Reserve and the government to step in and help. Unless of course, they are Malaysian governments. But since we're talking about US stock market, let's just focus back on the US events. They've already lowered the interest rates to extremely low levels, they've discussed about an even bigger stimulus package in the process, so I think that pretty much says it all. So the third, we've already had a lot of time to analyze all this, and I doubt if a drop does occur, it will be as bad as what we had in March. And I know a lot of people are thinking that instead of seeing a straight downward spiral, it's going to be a steady decline, and that could be possible. But given that all of the fear are already out of the way, everything from here on out seems to be more optimistic than what we faced in the beginning of this year. Which leads me to believe that even if we do have a drop, it wouldn't be as bad as the start of this year because all the panic has been thrown out the window, has been gone out the way. Whoosh! And fourth, there's an assumption that all this bad news is already priced into the market. Because when it comes to the stock market, it's very forward thinking. It doesn't really care what happened yesterday or what's going on today. It just matters what people think the stock market is going to head towards in the future, and that price is reflected on today. But right now, it's almost priced in because unemployment rates are still going to remain high, jobs aren't coming back yet, and maybe a stimulus package isn't even going to come in the US. And despite of it all, we're still at an all-time high. Which leads me to understand that if everything does improve, the stock market will follow accordingly as all the bad news starts to wear off. And fifth, As the economy starts reopening again, we could very well see a shift towards recovery stocks. These are some of the hard-hit businesses such as travel agencies, airlines, casinos, hotels. These could probably be one of the last sectors to recover, but as the vaccine comes out, people start going out. Eventually, these stocks will recover when people start pulling out their money from rubber glove companies and tech companies and dump them back into these companies, which will boost their stock prices up. So as you can see, we have some decent arguments both for and against the stock market being good in 2021. So as to what I believe is going to happen in 2021, I think we're going to continue moving the similar direction as we're moving as of now, but its pace is going to be depending on when the vaccine comes out. Anyway, I really think that 2021 is going to come out with more stability, for a lot of the unforeseen surprises and panics are already moved out the way. Now, I don't mean to say that the stock market can't go down, but I would be shocked if the stock market took another downward spiral like it did in March. And if all of this progress stays the same, I will not be surprised if the stock market reaches another all-time high. But nothing will change my investment strategy next year, which is to buy and hold massive high-growth companies.
Smash like button.
If the market goes down, perfect, I can buy at a cheaper price. If the market goes up, well, I made some money. But either way, it's a win-win for me. But all in all, what I'm doing is just the boring stuff, which is buying, holding, and accumulating as much as possible. And if you're wondering what my majority positions are, it is in cannabis and also in Chinese tech companies. With that said, for those of you who enjoy investment and businesses, do subscribe down below because I'll be posting more and more of this content. If you have any questions or advice, do drop a comment down below. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.